A hand moves slowly over the edge of a baked brick, worn smooth by time and touch, its surface etched with precise lines where two walls met at a right angle, neat as if measured yesterday. This is not just any wall. It's part of what once was a city street in Mohenjo-daro, now buried beneath sandstone and silence. Brick lies on the ground where centuries ago carts rumbled over cobblestone, where people walked with purpose through grids laid out with mathematical care. You can almost hear the shuffle of feet along streets aligned true north and south, each block a perfect rectangle, every house built not haphazardly, but to fit within a vast design only human minds could conceive. Look down at the ground beneath your feet. There is no pavement here, just earth, packed hard where the city's life once flowed. Beneath this surface, layers of history sleep, drainage channels lined with mortar, terracotta drains in neat rows leading away from homes, a system so advanced it rivals Roman engineering, though built nearly 4,000 years before Rome existed. The water that ran here was not wasted. It was guided through covered sewers to the edge of town, where it vanished into unseen depths. And still, no one knows what these people called themselves, or why they left behind such order only to vanish without a trace. Their script rows of symbols on seals and tablets is beautiful in its balance, but the language remains locked. No Rosetta Stone has ever been found among their ruins, not even names survive. What we know is drawn not from words, but from walls that held firm against time, from drains that still carry rainwater when it falls, from grains stored in granaries and beads arranged in neat rows in burial chambers. The Indus Valley people did not leave inscriptions on monuments or tombs to tell their story, but the city remembers, and so do we, if only by reading the silence they left behind. Along the broad, slow curve of the Indus River and its tributaries, in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, a quiet revolution unfolded nearly 5,000 years ago. While ancient Egypt was already laying stone foundations for pyramids under a summer sun, and Mesopotamia's city-states were forging laws carved into clay tablets, this far-flung region developed a civilization of its own, orderly, expansive, and remarkably uniform across vast distances. The Indus Valley sprawled beneath the southern foothills of the Himalayas, where monsoon rains fed rivers that flooded each spring with life-giving water. In this fertile crescent between mountain range and arid plain, cities emerged not as centers of power built upon conquest or divine mandate, but as places designed for daily living grid, planned streets, standardized bricks, drainage systems beneath the soil. Unlike other early societies where kings and temples dominated the skyline, here the architecture spoke of civic harmony. Streets were laid out in precise right angles, aligning with compass points rather than natural features or sacred directions. Homes clustered around central courtyards, granaries stood near public spaces, wells punctuated neighborhoods like dots on a map. The scale was vast. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa alone covered hundreds of acres, each with tens of thousands of inhabitants. Yet there were no monumental palaces, no towering ziggurats, no grand tombs bearing names or titles. Instead, the evidence is subtle. Carefully laid bricks in uniform sizes, channels carved beneath streets to carry waste away, a sophisticated understanding of water management that included covered drains and soakage pits. In this era of early urbanism, while the Nile Valley thrived under pharaohs and Sumerian scribes recorded trade transactions on clay tablets, an unknown culture flourished along the Indus, remarkable not only for its engineering, but also for its silence. No known ruler is named in its ruins, no epic poem survives to explain its worldview. The people of this region built their cities with a quiet precision that suggests deep planning and shared belief in civic order. But what they believed, why they left behind so little written evidence, or how the civilization ended remain questions without clear answers. This was not just a society, it was an experiment in urban life, one whose full meaning still eludes us. The story of the Indus Valley Civilization unfolds not through grand inscriptions or royal decrees, but in the quiet language of ruins and fragments. What we know begins with the careful excavation of cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, sites where archaeologists have uncovered meticulously laid out streets, grid patterns aligned with cardinal directions, and homes built with standardized baked bricks. These alignments suggest a level of urban planning far ahead of its time, but they do not speak for themselves. Their meaning is drawn from measurement, observation, and the careful reconstruction of what once stood. The layout itself, the consistency in brick size, street orientation, and building placement points to centralized coordination, though we cannot say whether it was a unified state or a network of autonomous communities. Water systems are among the most revealing traces. Well-constructed drainage channels beneath streets, private bathrooms with waste chutes into public drains, and large reservoirs that suggest sophisticated sanitation. These features are not mere coincidence. Their repetition across multiple sites indicates shared standards. Yet we cannot read the minds behind them, only infer intent from function. The civilization's writing remains one of its greatest enigmas. Thousands of short inscriptions appear on seals, pottery, and tablets, often just a few signs long. These markings are uniform in style but have defied decipherment. While some patterns suggest symbolic or administrative use, the absence of parallel texts like those found at Rosetta Stone prevents any firm interpretation. Modern science amplifies what archaeology reveals. Carbon dating helps place events within centuries. Soil and bone analysis offers clues about diet, migration, and environmental change. 3D modeling reconstructs collapsed buildings from scattered bricks. Yet even with all this, the limits remain clear. No personal records survive, no royal tombs, no monumental texts to explain motives or beliefs. What we have is a civilization's silent blueprint, orderly, advanced, yet profoundly elusive in its inner life. We understand how it lived, but not why. They woke before dawn, stirred by the hush of night, giving way to the slow breath of a new day. In homes built of sun-dried brick, stacked in careful rows across wide streets, families moved with quiet purpose. Mothers stepped into courtyards where stone-wash basins stood beneath low eaves, water drawn from wells lined with baked clay or channeled through earthen drains. Children learned the rhythm of daily life, not through books but by watching hands, mothers grinding millet and barley between stones, fathers shaping mud bricks for repairs to walls that had weathered the monsoon's long breath. In narrow lanes, people passed one another without speaking, neighbors whose names might be known only by their trades. The weaver worked in a back room where looms stood near open courtyards. The potter mixed clay with measured hands, shaping vessels that would carry grain or water from market to home. There was no king's decree here, not in form, but order held, each person moving within a structure that had been shaped by generations. They ate simple meals, flatbread baked on hot stones, lentils simmered with turmeric and fenugreek, perhaps fish caught in the river or small game from nearby fields. Meals were shared at low wooden tables, eaten while seated on mats. The air carried the scent of drying spices, animal dung smoke, and clean earth after rain. Yet beneath the calm was a quiet vigilance. Houses stood close together, perhaps for security, perhaps to share resources. Children played near drains that ran under streets, their laughter echoing into deep channels carved with precision. They were not afraid of water, they relied on it. But when the rains came too long, or the river swelled beyond its banks, fear rose like mist from the fields. There was no grand temple, no monument to a god who ruled the world, only clay figurines found tucked in corners, perhaps offerings, perhaps prayers whispered into still air. And so their lives unfolded, not in glory but in quiet repetition and careful care. Not in conquest of records, but in breath, hands, meals, and the slow rhythm of surviving where earth met sky. At its heart, the mystery of the Indus Valley Civilization is not merely that it existed. Its cities were vast, ambitious, and astonishingly precise, but that it disappeared without a clear marker in the archaeological record. There are no battles etched on stone, no royal tombs filled with gold, no inscriptions declaring cause or consequence. Great urban centers of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa stood for centuries beneath an unbroken layer of earth, their streets laid out with geometric precision, their homes built to face east toward the rising sun, their drainage systems running through brick-lined channels that still carry water in places today. This was not just a settlement, it was a deliberate order, organized, functional, communal. Yet this order collapsed without warning or traceable catastrophe. No signs of fire, no mass burial sites, no shattered weapons suggest invasion or war. The city's walls remain intact, its granaries untouched by time, yet the people vanished as if they had simply stepped into the wind and were never seen again. Archaeologists have found tools abandoned in workshops, vessels left mid-use at doorways, evidence not of destruction but of departure. And so we are left with a civilization that mastered urban design, engineered water management on an industrial scale, participated in trade networks stretching from Afghanistan to the Arabian Gulf, but whose language remains undeciphered, whose rulers are unknown, and whose end defies narrative. The central dynamic is this: how could such a sophisticated system endure for centuries, yet leave no story behind? The city planners were masters of proportion and flow, yet we cannot read their thoughts. They built systems that still function in parts today, but we do not know why they stopped. Their culture was vast and interconnected, but it left us only silence where meaning should be. The Indus Valley does not speak, but the silence is louder than any voice. It asks what civilization means when it leaves no trace of its soul. The end of the Indus Valley Civilization was not a single moment, but a slow turning inward, something that unfolded over generations, perhaps even centuries. Great cities once thrived on intricate planning, their grids laid out with precision, streets aligned to cardinal directions, homes arranged in orderly rows around central courtyards. But as time passed, the rhythm of life began to shift. Houses were built closer together, sometimes reusing foundations from earlier structures, evidence not of expansion, but of adaptation. The careful spacing that once defined urban space gave way to denser, more compact neighborhoods. This was not decline in form alone. It suggests a different kind of survival, one marked by less emphasis on grand civic order. Alongside this came changes in the water systems. What were once sophisticated drainage channels, wells, and reservoirs grew uneven. Some cities saw their drains blocked or abandoned, others adapted with smaller, localized cisterns. The scale of infrastructure that once served thousands now seems to serve only families or small clusters, suggesting a shift from centralized administration to decentralized living. And as the environment changed, the river shifted course, seasonal rains became less predictable, the people had to rework their relationship with water. Trade networks, too, began to falter. The exchange of goods across vast distances, lapis lazuli from the mountains, carnelian from Gujarat, shell beads from the coast, slowed or ceased in certain regions. But it is difficult to say whether this was due to climate change, political fragmentation, or a cultural shift toward self-sufficiency. Some sites show signs of reduced craft production, others maintain their workshops but with simpler designs. The writing remains undeciphered, not just as an unsolved puzzle, but as a silence that speaks volumes about what may have been lost. The absence of monumental inscriptions in the final centuries suggests not only a cultural transformation, but perhaps a loss of shared systems, of law, ritual, or record-keeping, that once bound communities together. And so the cities did not fall overnight. They faded, not with fire and ruin, but with quiet change, less order, more intimacy, less connection to distant worlds, more reliance on local rhythms. What remains is not a collapse in the dramatic sense, but a transformation, deeply human, quietly profound, still unexplained. The Indus Valley Civilization presents a profound paradox. Its sophistication is undeniable, yet so much remains hidden behind layers of silence and absence. The precision of urban planning grid layouts, standardized bricks, sophisticated drainage, suggests a level of organization that defies easy explanation. But why did such advanced societies vanish without clear records? We know they traded across vast distances, from Mesopotamia to the Gulf, yet we cannot say how or by whom these networks were managed. The absence of grand palaces, temples, or royal tombs raises questions about social hierarchy and power. Was authority decentralized, ritualized, or simply unrecorded? Most enduring is the mystery of their script found on seals, pottery, and tablets, but never deciphered. Some assume it must be a written language, perhaps even a Proto-Indo-European tongue, yet its brevity and lack of repetition suggest ritual or administrative use rather than narrative storytelling. There is no Rosetta Stone here. Claims that the script reveals royal decrees or epic myths are wishful projections, not evidence. Popular myth insists on an egalitarian utopia, cities without conflict, rulers, or war. But the discovery of defensive walls around some sites and weapons among burials hints at danger, inequality, or social stress. The idea that this was a peaceful, harmonious society is romanticizing absence of evidence as proof. We are also limited by what survives. Organic materials decayed, and we have no written records from the people themselves. We reconstruct through artifacts, but interpretation depends on assumptions about how societies function. Assumptions drawn from other civilizations, not this one. The Indus Valley was neither a state nor an empire as we understand them. It may have been a network of independent city-states or a loosely coordinated confederation. The truth is not in the gaps alone, but in our humility to admit that some questions may never be answered. We can admire their engineering and trade, respect their complexity, but must also accept that much of what they believed, feared, or dreamed remains beyond reach, untranslated, unsung, unspoken. Even now, centuries after their cities fell silent, the streets of Mohenjo-Daro still hold their breath beneath the dust. Not in ruins, but in continuity, like a memory etched into stone and clay. The precision of their grid patterns speaks not just of planning, but of purpose, an ordered world shaped by hands that imagined what came next. They built with care, not for eternity, but for life as it was lived. Water channels lined with baked bricks, drains beneath homes, wells at the corner of every courtyard. These were not grand monuments to gods or kings, but systems tuned to survival and dignity. The Indus people traded across vast distances, not just goods, but ideas, forms, materials that moved quietly along rivers and over mountains. Seals, beads, weights, each a token in a conversation between far-flung places. And yet, no royal tombs, no inscriptions proclaiming glory. Their language remains unread, its symbols suspended between intention and silence. No scribes signed their work, no emperors claimed it. What endures is not what we can name or explain, but the quiet insistence of a society that measured time, not in conquests, but in clean streets, reliable water, equitable space. They did not leave us answers, but they left questions shaped like city squares and drainage channels. The way their cities were built, symmetrical, deliberate, communal, suggests something deeper than utility, a shared understanding of how people should live together. We can only imagine the moment when that balance cracked, the shift from order to uncertainty, or perhaps slow erosion into quiet disintegration. But even in its absence, the Indus Valley stands as evidence not just of what was built, but of what might have been. Not all civilizations leave empires behind. Some leave patterns of care, fairness, and a kind of dignity that doesn't need to be written down. In their silence, we hear something ancient, that civilization is less about permanence than it is about the courage to build meaningfully, even when no one will ever read your name.